In the heart of Lagos, Nigeria, where modern skyscrapers pierce the sky and bustling streets overflow with life, Uche, a curious young woman in her late 20s, stumbles upon a small, hidden shop in a quiet alley. The city hums with the sound of motorbikes, street vendors, and the distant calls of traders. Yet, this alley is different, eerily quiet, as though time itself is slowed. The shop is a relic from another age, marked by an ancient, weathered sign that reads "The Oracle's Den," etched in an unfamiliar, script-like pattern. Inside, the atmosphere is thick with the scent of incense and ancient history. Shelves groan under the weight of dusty scrolls, leather-bound books, and odd artifacts from forgotten times. Uche is drawn to a particularly old book, its cover embossed with strange, glowing symbols. As she brushes the dust away and opens it, faint whispers fill the air, and shadows seem to shift along the walls. Uche's heart races, and for a moment, the air grows cold. Peering out the shop window, Uche catches a glimpse of a figure draped in shadow, barely distinguishable but undeniably there. The figure disappears before her eyes, blending into the darkness of the alley as if it never existed. A sense of dread lingers, but so does her curiosity. What did the book contain, and why did the shadows seem to come alive? These mysteries cling to her mind as she steps back into the crowded streets of Lagos. As Uche heads home, she feels the presence of eyes watching her, unseen yet felt. Every shadow seems to stretch longer, darker, more ominous than before. Something has awakened. The chapter ends with Uche clutching the mysterious book close to her chest, glancing over her shoulder as the alley fades behind her, but the whispering shadows do not. Uche finds herself drawn to an unlikely ally, an old man named Baba Kalu, who runs an antiquities shop deep within Lagos' oldest district. The store is packed with relics of Nigeria's past, bronze statues from the Benin Kingdom, ancient Igbo carvings, and Yoruba ceremonial masks. Baba Kalu is wise but eccentric, his age-worn face framed by gray braids, his eyes sharp despite his years. Uche shows him the book, and his expression shifts from casual interest to deep concern. "This is not an ordinary relic," Baba Kalu says, his voice low and steady. "It holds the power of the ancestors, the heart of the ancestors. In fact, an artifact many believe to be lost." He points to an amulet hanging on the wall. Similar symbols to the ones in Uche's book glow faintly on its surface. "You will need this," he adds, taking the amulet and handing it to her. It feels warm in Uche's hand, like it's alive with some hidden energy. Later that night, Uche walks the busy streets of Lagos, the lights of the city shining brightly in the distance. The amulet hangs around her neck, its weight comforting yet unsettling. As she passes through a narrow street, the air grows cold once again, and there in the distance, standing beneath a flickering street lamp, is the shadowy figure from the shop window. It stands still, observing her, its form more defined now, tall and slender, draped in a long, flowing robe that blends into the night. The figure raises a hand, and a faint glow emanates from its palm. Dark energy swirls around it, making the air thick with tension. Uche feels her heart race as she reaches for the amulet, but before she can react, the figure steps backward into the shadows and disappears. Shaken, Uche realizes she has been marked. Something ancient has noticed her, and it wants the power she now carries. She continues her walk, the weight of Baba Kalu's warning heavy on her mind. The chapter ends with her feeling the weight of fate closing in, a storm brewing just beyond her sight. The streets of Lagos vanish, replaced by a vast, surreal landscape. Uche finds herself in an endless desert beneath a sky darkened by swirling clouds. The ground beneath her feet is no longer concrete, but shifting sand, and the air hums with an ancient power. She is not in Lagos anymore. This place is a liminal space, a world between worlds where time and reality blur. In the distance, shimmering mirages flicker, scenes from her life. She sees herself as a child, running through her village, her feet kicking up red dust as she laughs with her younger brother. The scene changes, showing moments of her adolescence, her struggles to find herself, and her growing independence in the bustling city. Each memory feels tangible, like she could reach out and touch them, but they are always just out of reach. Suddenly, the images shift, and Uche stands at the edge of a massive cliff. Below her, the ocean roars, its waves crashing violently against jagged rocks. On the cliff's edge stands a younger version of herself, staring down into the abyss with fear in her eyes. This is the pivotal moment in her life, the moment she almost gave up. The moment she let doubt consume her. But now, standing beside her past self, Uche feels different. She is no longer afraid. She steps forward, reaching out to her younger self. But as she does, the ground begins to crumble beneath her feet. She falls, plummeting into the stormy sea below. The water is cold, pulling her under, suffocating her. Panic rises, but just as the darkness threatens to engulf her, she feels the warmth of the amulet around her neck. In an instant, she is back in the present, gasping for breath, drenched in sweat. She stands in the alley where she first saw the shadowy figure, the city lights flickering around her like stars in the night sky. The dark figure materializes once again, closer than before. Its eyes glow red, and its presence feels even more oppressive. The chapter ends as Uche grips the amulet, bracing herself for whatever comes next. Uche's journey takes her deep into the heart of Lagos' old district, where the past and present collide in the most unexpected ways. The streets are narrow, the buildings worn with age, yet there is a vibrant energy in the air, an energy that feels both modern and ancient. She arrives at a grand, ornate gate carved with symbols from countless African tribes. Behind the gate lies a temple hidden from the eyes of the modern world. The temple's entrance is overgrown with vines, but the energy emanating from within is unmistakable. Uche pushes through, entering a large chamber bathed in dim, golden light. The walls are covered in ancient hieroglyphs, their meaning lost to time. At the center of the room, resting upon a stone pedestal, is the heart of the ancestors, a glowing orb swirling with shades of red, gold, and green. As Uche approaches the heart, the air around her becomes thick with tension. She reaches out, but just before her fingers touch the orb, the dark figure materializes behind her. This time, its presence is fully formed, a tall, menacing shadow with glowing red eyes and tendrils of dark energy radiating from its body. "You are not worthy," the figure's voice hisses, echoing off the temple walls. Uche's heart pounds in her chest. She turns to face the figure, her grip tightening around the amulet. The dark energy surrounding the figure crackles with intensity, and the temple walls begin to tremble. Uche knows she is standing at the precipice of something much larger than herself. This is not just about her. It's about her ancestors, her future, and the legacy she must protect. The chapter ends with a dark figure lunging toward her, the room collapsing around them as Uche braces for the air. The futuristic skyline of Lagos gleams under the night sky, its towering buildings and flying vehicles casting neon lights across the streets below. Amid this city of the future, ancient power surges as Uche stands on the rooftop of one of the tallest buildings, the heart of the ancestors glowing brightly in her hand. The dark figure stands across from her, its form now fully revealed, a swirling mass of shadows and fire, its red eyes burning with malevolent intent. The air crackles with tension as the final battle begins. Uche, empowered by the wisdom and strength of the ancestors, draws upon the heart's energy. The dark figure lunges at her, tendrils of shadow lashing out like whips. Uche dodges, the energy from the heart shielding her from the worst of the attacks. Lightning crackles in the sky above as their powers clash, sending shockwaves through the air. Below, the city watches in awe as the ancient battle unfolds above them. The buildings hum with the energy of the ancestors, the streets below pulsing with the rhythm of the heart. Uche's movements are fluid, graceful, as she channels the power of her lineage. Each strike pushing the dark figure closer to defeat. In a final, desperate move, the dark figure lunges, but Uche, with one last surge of strength, drives the heart of the ancestors into the figure's core. There is a blinding flash of light, and the figure dissolves into nothingness, vanquished once and for all. Uche stood at the edge of a vast desert, the red sands stretching endlessly into the horizon. The heart of the ancestors pulsed with an almost frantic energy, pulling her toward the final test that awaited her. The sky above was streaked with purple and gold, the sun low, casting an eerie light over the land. This was the last barrier she had to cross, but she could feel something was different here. The weight of her journey pressed on her shoulders, and the spirits of the ancestors whispered in the wind, urging her forward. As she walked deeper into the desert, the air grew hotter, and the wind whipped the sand into swirling clouds around her. Her steps felt heavier, as if the earth itself was trying to hold her back. Uche knew she was close. This was the place where her resolve would be tested to its very core. She had faced fear, doubt, and the shadows of the past, but this felt like something far more insidious. The air around her grew thick, oppressive, as though something unseen watched her every move. Suddenly, the wind stopped. The silence that followed was deafening, and Uche found herself standing before a massive stone altar, half buried in the sands. Carved into the surface were ancient symbols, glowing faintly in the dim light. Above the altar, suspended in midair, was a golden mask, its eyes hollow, its surface etched with intricate patterns. Uche's heart pounded in her chest. She knew this was the final challenge, the moment where all her trials would culminate. But there was something else here. She could feel it in her bones. The presence of something ancient and powerful lurked just beyond the veil of reality. The golden mask seemed to watch her, its hollow eyes reflecting the flickering light of the setting sun. Uche stepped forward, her hand instinctively going to the heart of the ancestors around her neck. As her fingers brushed the glowing amulet, the ground beneath her feet trembled, and the air seemed to vibrate with energy. From the sands rose a figure, tall, cloaked in shadows, its form shifting like smoke. It wore the same golden mask that hovered above the altar, but its body was featureless, its presence a void in the world. This was no spirit, no ghost of the ancestors. This was something far older, a force that had existed long before humanity, bound to the earth and the skies. Uche could feel its power pressing down on her, suffocating, drowning her in its weight. "You have come far," the figure said, its voice echoing like the wind over the dunes. "But the true test has only just begun." Uche swallowed hard, her throat dry from the desert heat and the tension that gripped her. "What do you want from me?" she asked, her voice steady despite the fear that gripped her heart. The figure tilted its head, the golden mask gleaming in the fading light. The heart of the ancestors is not just a key to power. It is a burden, a responsibility that can crush the unworthy. You must prove that you are worthy to wield it, to carry the weight of the past and the future. The desert stretched behind her, a distant memory now. Uche stood at the threshold of the great forest, where towering trees with ancient, knotted trunks swayed in the gentle wind. The leaves shimmered with a vibrant green under the golden light of dawn, casting dappled shadows on the path before her. She had crossed the desert, faced the trials, and let go of the weight that had burdened her for so long. Now, as she entered the forest, a sense of peace washed over her, a calmness she had not felt since she was a child. With each step, the heart of the ancestors hung lightly around her neck, no longer pulsing with the heavy energy that had once overwhelmed her. It was quiet now, still. She realized that the power it held was no longer something that controlled her. It was part of her. The lessons, the pain, the joy, and the strength of her ancestors flowed through her veins. Her journey had transformed her, and now she stood on the precipice of something new. As Uche moved deeper into the forest, she began to notice the subtle sounds of nature around her, the rustling of leaves, the soft chirping of birds, the distant hum of the earth beneath her feet. Everything felt alive, connected. Her senses were sharper, her mind clearer than ever before. The anger, the fear, the doubt that had once clouded her judgment were gone, replaced by an unshakable confidence that radiated from within. She came to a clearing where a pool of crystal-clear water glistened under the sunlight. The air here was fresher, filled with the scent of wildflowers and earth. Uche knelt by the water's edge and gazed into its depths. Her reflection stared back at her, but it was not the same face she had seen at the beginning of her journey. Her eyes, once filled with uncertainty, now gleamed with purpose. Her posture, once tense and guarded, was now relaxed and open. She was no longer the girl who had set out on this path. She was something more. In the reflection, she saw a vision, a glimpse of her ancestors standing behind her, their faces solemn but proud. They no longer appeared as distant figures, but as equals, their presence warm and familiar. Uche smiled softly, realizing that she was not alone. She had never been alone. The ancestors had walked with her every step of the way, guiding her, but it was her strength, her resilience, that had brought her here. The forest around her seemed to hum in recognition of her transformation. A breeze picked up, rustling the leaves overhead, as if the earth itself acknowledged her growth. Uche stood, her heart light, her spirit free. The burdens of the past had been left behind in the desert, and in their place was an unbreakable bond with her heritage, a bond that transcended time and space. As she walked further into the forest, Uche felt a new energy coursing through her. She was not just a vessel for the past, she was a bridge between the old and the new, a living testament to the power of resilience and the strength of the human spirit. The world ahead was vast and unknown, but she no longer feared it. The lessons of the past had armed her for whatever challenges awaited. In the distance, the path split into two. Uche paused, considering her options. Both roads were unfamiliar, leading deeper into the heart of the forest, but she knew that whichever path she chose, she was ready. The trials behind her had taught her not only about her inner strength, but about the power of choice. She had the freedom to decide her destiny, unbound by fear or doubt. With a deep breath, Uche stepped forward, choosing the path to the right. The forest grew denser as Uche ventured deeper along the path, the trees casting intricate shadows around her. There was an undeniable peace that filled the air, but with it came a growing anticipation, as if the earth itself was whispering to her, nudging her towards something significant. She could feel it. Her journey was far from over. The forest had welcomed her with open arms, but there was more for her to discover. As Uche walked, the sounds of the forest became louder, more vivid. The rustling of leaves seemed to carry words she couldn't quite understand, but they stirred something deep within her soul. She had transformed, yes, but her transformation had awakened something far greater than herself. There was a new energy coursing through her veins, a power that wasn't solely her own. She was no longer just a carrier of her ancestors' legacy. She was the voice of something new, something yet to be born. Suddenly, Uche heard a faint melody in the distance. It was haunting, yet beautiful, like the song of the wind through hollow reeds. The melody stirred memories within her, distant echoes of her childhood, the lullabies her mother sang under the full moon, the songs of the women in her village during harvest. But this melody was different, charged with a mystic energy she couldn't quite place. Intrigued, Uche followed the sound, weaving through the thick brush of the forest. The closer she got, the stronger the melody became, and with it, the air seemed to thrum with life. The trees began to glow faintly, their leaves shimmering with an otherworldly light, as though they were alive in a way Uche had never seen before. She felt a deep pull toward the source of the sound, a gravitational force that stirred the very core of her being. Finally, Uche entered a small glade, and in the center stood a figure, a woman, ageless and ethereal, draped in flowing robes that shimmered with the colors of the earth. Her hair was woven with flowers and leaves, and her eyes, though ancient, sparkled with youthful energy. She was playing a small, intricately carved flute, its notes spinning the air into delicate threads of magic. The woman stopped playing and turned her gaze to Uche, her expression unreadable yet kind. Uche felt the weight of the woman's gaze, as though she was being seen in ways she had never been seen before. As though the woman could peer into her soul and understand all that had brought her here. "You have traveled far," the woman said, her voice soft, yet it seemed to resonate through the entire forest. "And your journey is not yet over, child." Uche stood silent, captivated by the woman's presence. She knew instinctively that this was no ordinary being. This was a spirit, an ancient force of nature, perhaps even the embodiment of the forest itself. The woman's energy pulsed in the air, harmonizing with the rhythm of the earth beneath them. "What is this place?" Uche asked, her voice barely a whisper. "This is where the past, present, and future converge," the woman replied, stepping toward Uche. "You have carried the weight of your ancestors, learned the strength within yourself. But now, you must face the most important part of your journey." Uche frowned, her heart quickening. "What is that?"